A little boy had been wanting a puppy for a long, long time. And it was his birthday, and his mother said, well, we're going to the pet shop today to pick out a puppy. Well, he was just excited. He was really glad to see this. And he got there, and he went from cage to cage, from dog to dog, looked at all the dogs, and he settled on this one. And that dog was wagging its tail so furiously, it was just amazing. And he said, that's the dog I want. And his mother said, well, why did you pick that dog? He says, I wanted a dog with a happy ending. Isn't that what you want? Don't you want a happy ending to your story? Don't you want a happy beginning and a happy middle? We all want that. And we spend a lot of time trying to force it or make it happen. And that's, of course, where the problem comes in. It doesn't always happen that way. We're much like the little boy who was struggling to do an English paper that he had to do, and he was really having a hard time. And the teacher had a little sympathy for him because she knew he was struggling with this. And the day came when he was supposed to hand the paper in, and she was coming around the class, picking up the papers, and she asked him where his homework was, and he said, I'm very sorry, but my dog ate it. And the teacher gave him one of those teachers I know better than this looks, looked him right in the face and said, your dog ate it? He says, oh yes, teacher, really, he ate it. I had to force him, but he ate it. And we're doing that. We're trying to force our life to be like we want it to be. And if you've done that, you know that that's not necessarily working too well for you. So we're going to take a little bit of a different approach tonight to see how can you get your life to be what it is. Now, one of the things most of you probably didn't like in school was math, right? And remember geometry? Euclid geometry with all these different figures that you see up there. You had to calculate the circumference of them and the area and all those things. And that was kind of not any fun. Well, I want to talk to you about another kind of geometry. And let me assure you, you're not going to have to learn how to do this, but you need to know that it exists. The man who invented calculus, one of the men, was named Leibniz. And he experimented with some special math that really wasn't part of calculus, and then it was sort of dropped for a couple of 150 years. But then other people picked it up and moved it on, and about the beginning of the last century, the beginning of the 20th century, they began to move into this new kind of geometry called fractal geometry. And the problem with fractal geometry was it was so complicated, or not complicated so much as it was so complex and so huge volumes of calculations that until we had fast running computers, it couldn't be done well. Well, in the mid-70s, when those computers came online, fractal geometry took off. And I'm going to show you a few things about fractal geometry, and you don't have to learn this, you just have to be aware of what it is and what's happening with it. There's a little triangle, right? If we were to apply fractal geometry, what we would do is we would put another triangle on there. And that one triangle divides the triangle into 4 other equilateral triangles. And then if we did that again, and now it goes up again to 12. In other words, each triangle's a little bit smaller, it's half the size, a quarter of the size, I mean, but it keeps making these same triangles over and over again. And in the corner one, you see how that is? And you could go on and on and on in these smaller and smaller pieces, and that's, of course, why they call it fractal geometry. Take a look at this. That's what it would look like. Just keep repeating the same thing over and over again. And I'm going to show you a couple of fractal geometry pictures. These are pictures that are fully generated by computers. There's no artist, there's no art to these. These are mathematical formulas played out onto a screen. That is a math formula, not a picture. So is that. Notice how these things look, a lot of them, like natural things. All of those are fractals. Doesn't that look like a galaxy? That's a fractal. Well, here is another fractal. Watch it as we go farther and farther. We close in on this fractal. Notice the main shape and keep looking for that main shape as it repeats itself as we get in smaller and smaller. See them along the side? As you see them appearing again, that same figure, and you keep going in deeper and deeper, there's another one we're coming into. And we go deeper and deeper. There's one. There's a little teeny one there. We focus in on that. It's the same repeating thing over and over and over again. Now let's come back out so you can see it from the point of the very small moving out back to the big again. And notice how that figure repeats itself. This is one done with a circle instead of a triangle. It's probably the most popular fractal. And every time you change the formula, you change what it produces. And it comes out looking like flowers. Then what they discovered was they could take a set of leaves, take a big picture from very high up of a tree, and then focus in on a small set of leaves and pull that set of leaves off. And they could superimpose that leaves on the whole tree. You got the same pattern on a smaller part of the tree and got the same pattern. These are natural trees. This, ladies and gentlemen, is God's mathematics. This is how the universe is created, through these fractals. They make all these so-called irregular natural states all have a formula. They can calculate the formula for a flower. I see beautiful flowers done by fractals that you would never think was anything but a good artist doing them, or even a photograph. That is a tree, right? Nope, that's a fractal. That's a fractal. In fact, for those of you that care, would you like to know the formula? You can work this out. I was very interested in math when I was younger, and I studied it in college, and I liked it until calculus took me. I didn't take it. And so I never really followed up. But that's a formula for that tree. So everything is a part of the math. And maybe you didn't like math. The good news is God does the math. You don't have to do any of it. God is doing all the math. You have a different job. God does all the creating. But you have a job. If you are going to participate in this magnificent universe, your job is to point with your thought to what you want. And if you're pointing to what you want, you can't be doing this. You've got to be pointing to what you want and not everything else. And you can't look around and say, well, it's not over here. You literally have to keep pointing with your thought to what you want and not be distracted by all the stuff that's going on. Now, here we have something called H2O. Anybody ever heard of H2O? Right. H2O has three forms. It can be vapor, like steam. That's vapor. Or it can be liquid, or actual liquid water. Or it can be a solid, like ice. Now, is water different when it's ice than when it's steam? Or when it's the actual molecules doesn't change a bit. They move a little faster. Same molecule, but in a totally different way. The water never changes, but its form changes. The way it acts changes. It's still one thing. There is one spirit, one energy in the universe that it displays itself in several ways, like water. There's spirit. That is all over the place, permeates everything, everywhere present, just like the vapor in the air. It's always there. Spirit's all there. Not only is it there, presence as the substance of what makes up the world, it also has the intelligence in it to make anything it's called on to be made. For an example, it can turn itself into water. And what is water equivalent? It's mind. When we are thinking, we're in the liquid part of this energy, if you will, as opposed to the spiritual part, which is all over the place. And our thoughts can dissipate, become steam, or they can condense and become water. And then we can take that very liquid, because you know if you're thinking, you can think about one thing and flip to the next thing and the next thing. Your thoughts are not solid. They're very fluid. But you can solidify them into what we call matter. When you focus your thought, you are literally freezing your thoughts into the matter that you want. And I want you to have that analogy that it's just one spirit and it can be formed in different forms. Okay, everything in the universe is energy vibrating. We've talked about that before. There's nothing but energy. What we call solid is just frequencies bumping into each other. Each frequency is like a music note. It has a different pitch. How many notes are there in an octave, by the way? Anybody know? Oh, 7. There are 7. That's why they call it an octave, of course. Octave does mean 8. But octaves are staggered. You have higher and lower octaves. But within the octaves, there are notes that correspond with each other. Like, let's look at like this octave of the higher one, and it's those notes that you know. And in an octave, there are 7 whole notes. Now, I said there were 7 notes, and a musician said, "Oh, there's hundreds of notes. You got quarter notes, you got all those." There are 7 whole notes in there. And these are, by the way, half notes, but that's okay. Now, you have a corresponding scale right below it, but at a lower pitch. If you play something on the bottom scale, then the top scale resonates with it. So what you're playing on your piano is the music God is going to play for you. What you're focused on is what God's going to do. And if you're focused on a sour note, that's exactly what you're going to get. God doesn't care what he produces for you. God doesn't care what she produces for you. God doesn't care what it produces for you. But it produces what you focus on and nothing else. And it does not matter if you're focusing on it consciously or unconsciously. It is any sort of a focus. It is any sort of thinking. You have 2 ways of thinking. One of them is love, and one of them is fear. Love is the life of vibrant energy, and fear is false evidence appearing real. Now, I use the term fear in a very special way. Most people think, well, I'm fearful when I'm afraid of something. You are fearful when you are angry. I want to say that again. You are fearful when you're angry. If you were not fearful, you could not be angry. Fear is one of the many manifestations, or anger is one of the many manifestations of fear. When you are depressed, you're in fear. All of those things are fear-based. Not like we ordinarily use fear, like I'm afraid of this. You may be really angry and ready to fight something. You're only doing it because you're afraid, because there's fear in you. It is not just a reaction or an emotion. Fear is an actual type of energy, a very low base energy. While on the other hand, love is a very high base energy. It's not a feeling, although love creates feelings. It's not a 4-letter word. Love is a type of energy. When I speak of love, I'm talking about a type of energy, and when I'm speaking of fear, I'm talking about the opposite type of energy. So let's look at some of those. Here's some love-based emotions and feelings. And as they go up the scale, they are higher and higher in pitch, and therefore have more and more energy. And you'll notice that on the very top is peace. I could have put bliss on top of that, but if we just get to this stage, we'd be in good shape. And as you go down, you have less and less power to create. When you're in those upper states, your creations go so much quicker, and you get so much more of what you want. If you're in the lower states, you're going to get some. They're going to work, but it'll take longer time. Might be not come out exactly like you want it. If you could live up in peace and joy, things would pop for you as they did for Jesus. As we've talked about before, the highest one that you can attain by choice is gratitude. That's exactly why we wrote our gratitude journal program. A lot of people use computers, and it's a program that gives you a gratitude journal right on your computer, and you can use it exactly at that point when you're upset because the boss just told you something. It is very important that you greet every piece of news, good or bad, with gratitude, because that's the highest state you can get into. I am thankful I got fired because I think I'll get a better job. Being grateful for everything that happens. I'm thankful for this situation because it's going to teach me something. I'm thankful for this situation because I know there's good someplace in it. That is gratitude, and keeping yourself in a constant state of gratitude, however you do that, whether journal or reminding yourself or whatever you do, that is so important. It's one of the most powerful tools we have. It's why we've talked so much to you about gratitude. It's a way to get your energy into the upper levels. If you were to stay in a state of gratitude without trying, without doing anything extra, you'd automatically be pulled up to the freedom, joy, peace area. Those are gifts from God. You can't get them. And they happen to you when you're at the higher levels. Appreciation, gratitude. That's when you're pulled up, if you will, to that higher energy. So that's why it's so important for you to get there and spend, even if you're in just enthusiasm and maybe the commitment and empowerment and optimism and so on, move yourself up as high as you can get. When you're doing your pivoting, you're moving yourself up that scale. Although Abraham calls it going downstream, which I agree with. Okay, here's the opposite. These are fear-based emotions and feelings. The one that's the highest energy is pride, but yet it's still a negative emotion. It's a negative thing. And people say, well, wait a minute. Pride, isn't that good? Pride goes before what? Okay, you already know that. Pride is a way of trying to pull yourself out of the lower energies, but you're still not above that. You've got to move a little higher than pride in order to get yourself into positive energy that starts drawing the things that you want. So it's very important when you're in these lower states, if you're down in depression and unworthiness, get up to anger. That's a much better place to be. Move yourself up into anger. Move yourself up into blame. Move yourself up into boredom. Move as far as you can up that scale each time. When you're pivoting, you're always trying to get to a little better state. Here's what happens. When you pivot and you get up just a few steps, the next time this comes up, you'll start at a higher level and you'll be able to go up even more steps. And you keep repeating this until the habit is formed that you always move up when you get into a negative state. That's part of this process. And when you get into the higher states, you're always trying to go a little farther higher to get yourself up to that constant state of gratitude, and then everything is done for you from there on. You have two ways to look at life. There's two windows you could look at. You can look at life through the window of love or positiveness. You can see it that way, or you can look at it through fear, anger, hatred, all the other things. Now, what happens when I'm going along and I have a fearful thought? I know I've got to switch windows. I've got to pull my attention away from that negativity, away from that fear thought, away from that anger, away from whatever it is, and move it as closely as I can over to the other window. No matter how bad it is, no matter how much justification there is for being angry and upset, it doesn't help you. Well, I have a right to be upset. Yes, you have a right to be upset, but you're going to pay a price for it. So if you want to pay the price, if you want a miserable life, stay upset. It's okay. God will still love you. You'll have a miserable life, but you'll still be loved. Isn't that nice to know? Now, this happens to be another fractal. This is a little different type, but I want you to look at it a little bit. Notice how there's a swirl of things, and one goes into the other. And if you looked at them sort of tilted on their side, they're actually perpendicular to each other, and yet they interface in a perpendicular way. Anybody heard perpendicular before? Didn't we talk about time being perpendicular to space and mind being perpendicular to time? Every part of the universe, every time we go up a number of octaves, we go into another perpendicular state. Well, this is an example of a fractal that way, and here's another one. Take a look at this. This is supposed to be a three-dimensional picture, and the mind is moving in a circle, and it's interpenetrating the timeline. So what's in your mind is coming out into the timeline as experience. So that's why it's so critical that you keep what you're doing in your mind at the level you want it to come out. Now, you don't have to learn to do this. You do not have to learn how to create things from mind to time. You're doing it right now. You've done it from the start. You can't unlearn it. It's the way you're made up. What you do have to do is look at the level. You can be operating that little machine of thinking down at a low level, and you're going to get low-level stuff in your timeline. Or you can raise the level, or raise it more, or raise it more, or raise it more. You don't have to do the process. The process is being done for you. All you have to do is raise your state of mind. That's all there is to this, raising your state of mind. Let's talk a little bit about this idea of manifestation. We've seen lots of movies like The Secret and other movies that say to you, all you have to do is think about something and it happens. That is true as far as it goes. What you think about is what happens. But if you're down in a low state and you're trying to get something that's in a high state, you're not going to get it. And that's why people get so frustrated. They hear this wonderful thing about the law of mind action. All I have to do is focus on what I want and it comes to me. That's true. But if you're not focused on what you want, if you're focused on not what you want, but the lack of it, which we'll see in a minute, that's where people are not manifesting. They're thinking more about what they don't have than what they do have. And when they don't have something, instead of immediately switching their thought about not having it to having it, they'll never get it. If you want a new car, you start blessing and praising and being grateful for the one you have. And just focus on the car you want. But you don't think about how much the payments will be on the car or how much gas prices are. If you think about that, you're creating the lack of a car instead of a car. You are either manifesting a thing or its opposite. And most of us are manifesting its opposite. We're manifesting the lack of what we want. We're thinking about, if I only had a. We want to have more money, and we look at our checking account and see that it's almost empty. And the more you look at the checking account, the more you're focusing on lack and not the actual thing that you want. Here's a guy doing some thinking. Okay. And he's visualizing what he wants. And if there is no interference, and he holds that long enough, sooner or later, that's going to come out in his experience. He'll actually have what he's focused his thought on, provided he hasn't interrupted again and again and again that thought. Let's look at this as time going through us, and this is again a perpendicular. We're not going through time. Time is coming through us. We're stationary, and time is coming through us like a movie. We've seen a slide of that before. A movie coming through us. We're watching life that's happening. But our state of mind is perpendicular to time. And it can be low or it can be high. So if we're in a high state of mind, a loving state of mind, and we have, say, an automobile that we want to manifest, as we keep ourselves constantly in the loving state of mind, gratitude, etc., and we keep thinking about the car we want, it is literally drawn to us over a period of time. And then it comes into our experience. Notice it was created instantly out there where we couldn't see it, but it comes down into our experience as we focus on it, as long as we stay in that high state. Let's take another example. Let's say we're in a loving state of mind and we don't know that we do not make affirmations in the future. Someday I will have a car. You can manifest a car in the future if you like. The problem is you're not there yet and you never will be. So if we're saying affirmations that are I will have, or if you're saying an affirmation, I have a wonderful car, but you're thinking, yeah, someday, this is what you're doing. You are manifesting. The same thing is working, but you're not manifesting it into the present moment. As time is going on, you're manifesting it out there into the future. And you don't get to have it if you manifest it in the future. And that's why you see it drive by. You've been thinking about that Cadillac, perfect Cadillac, and your neighbor gets one. Well, you haven't been thinking about it in the present moment. Every affirmation needs to be in the first person, and it needs to be in the present tense. You don't talk about the past or the future when you're doing affirmations. So let's look at another state. What if we're in a fear state, a low state? We're in a state of ingratitude. We're in a state of anger, upset, whatever. And we're thinking about, we want a car, but yet we're always in the state of I don't have enough money, etc. Here's what we're doing. We're literally pushing it away out of our consciousness. Well, let's talk about what about bad stuff? If we're in the high state of mind, what we're doing is pushing the bad stuff away from us. If we're in the bad state, and we think about the bad stuff, and we keep thinking about the bad stuff, and we keep thinking about the bad stuff, we are literally drawing it into our experience and wondering, how did this happen to me? Literally, because not so much focusing on the negative thought, but maintaining negative thoughts. Loving thoughts attract positive experiences, and loving thoughts repel negative experiences. Fear-based thoughts attract negative experiences and repel positive experiences. So, what do we need to do? We need to stop this thinking. We have drummed on you so hard to stop thinking about anything that doesn't make you feel joyful, no matter what the evidence is out there. You've got to be able to pull your attention away. Pulling your attention away from the evidence is what pivoting is all about. Maintaining a high state with, say, gratitude is what that's all about. Flooding yourself with positive affirmations is what that's all about. All of those things are to condition your thought patterns. And the more time you spend in those exercises of conditioning your mind to the positive thoughts, the more positive your overall average becomes. Because we all have an average. Sometimes you're feeling very good and on the top, and other times you're feeling down. Well, someplace in there is an average. There's some people's high that are lower than other people's low. And where are you? I don't know, but that's something you have to answer. And it doesn't matter if you're on the bottom of the barrel. You can gradually pull yourself up step by step by creating the habit of thinking the thoughts that attract what you want in your life. A lot of people want, like the little boy with the homework, wanted to make things happen. We want to control our lives. There are some of us, I'm sure that I'm the only one in this room, that are control freaks. And I'm going to use that term, control freak. There are people that want to make everything happen the way they want it to be. And they do it by getting other people or situations, they try to make things happen. That is the worst way to do things because you number one, you can make things happen. You really can. I mean, we've all done it. But the price is so high. Rather than trying to control your life and controlling it by what's out there, why don't you try to influence it? Why don't we play harmonious notes to get the power of the universe to work for us? So we want to go away from the idea of controlling our life and influencing it, even to your own thoughts. If you try to suppress and control your anger and your other things, you're just burying it. Influence it, gradually, pivot, change it a little, make it a little bit better. That's what we need to be doing. We want to keep ourselves in the highest state as we can, but if we get in a really, really bad down slump, things are a really horrible state, stay there for a few minutes. It's okay. And say, well, okay, I've been here for 10 minutes now. I've been depressed for 10 minutes, so would I like to go a little lower into total oblivion, or would I like to get angry at least? But I'm going to pull myself up a little bit each time. We are like the farmers who plant a seed, and the soil is our mind, and we plant this little seed. That's our job, is to plant the seed, the idea. Okay, and we have one more part of our job. We have to make sure after the seed is planted that we don't keep digging it up. You know the story about the kids in school that were learning how to grow plants, and they planted a seed, and every day they picked them up. Well, the plant's not going to grow if you keep picking it up. You got to let it alone and keep the soil watered. Keep it moist. Keep it full of gratitude, and keep the pests out. We put a barrier up. We pivot to prevent the pests from getting the seeds. And if we do that without any help from us, the plant grows because that's its nature. Our job is to plant the seed and to hold the thought. That's it. That's all, to hold the thought in a positive way. We don't grow the plant. We plant the seed or the idea. We keep the squirrels away. In other words, we keep ourselves in a loving state of mind. The squirrels are those little nitty thoughts that say you'll never get it and dig up the seed. God grows it. We have to cooperate with that sequence. What is up to us? What is going to happen is up to us. It's not up to God. When people pray, God, show me what to do, God's saying, I already have. What do you want? Neil Donald Walsh, I think, said it best. He said, there's no blackboard in the sky with your purpose written on it. There's no blackboard in the sky with your purpose written. You get to decide your purpose, not just once and for all, but every single day. And you get to call on the power of God to move you towards that purpose, but you must speak God's language. Love, not fear. Joy, not anger. You have to be in the state of mind that will resonate with the way God thinks. Be you therefore perfect as your Father. That's what Jesus said. And that's what he meant by perfect, not never making a mistake. He said, keep yourself in that high state of mind. If someone strikes you on one cheek, don't pay any attention. You just say, we would say, isn't that interesting? and turn the other cheek. Someone forces you to go an extra mile. Go another one with them. That's what that teaching was about. It's not about being a slave. It's about not resisting the stuff that's out there, because your state of mind is more important than what's happening. Because in the long run, it is your state of mind that regulates what happens or makes you do makes you have the experience that you have. The how it's to be done is up to God. It's not up to you to figure out how to do things. God figures it out and will give you the information that you need exactly when you need it in one way or another for you to accomplish the task that you're after. The when, people say, well, when is this all going to happen? The when depends on the consistency of being in a higher state of mind. How willing are you to hold yourself in this higher state of mind? The higher you hold yourself, the quicker things happen. And if they're taking a lot of time and you're getting a lot of delays, it's because you've got some thoughts that need to be cleaned out, literally. But God grows it. Came across this, Lauren actually came across this, and it was a saying written in a 17th century English church, and I loved what it said. It said, a vision without a task is but a dream. And a task without a vision is drudgery. How many of you are working for a living? What a terrible thing to have to do, to work for a living. If you were doing what you wanted to do, you could work 15 hours a day, have all the energy in the world, and it would seem like fun. People who are really doing it are not working at all, even though they may be at the office or whatever they're doing, long hours. They'd love it. They'd do it for free. It's fun. A vision and a task are the hope of the world. A task. Now, a lot of times when we see the movie, we think about, I'm just going to sit home, I'm going to meditate, I'm going to do my gratitude journal, I'm going to pray, I'm going to say some affirmations, and then I'm just going to sit here and let a duck fly into my mouth. Confucius said that. Man who waits for a duck to fly in his mouth will go hungry. There are tasks that you have to do. But what most of us do is think that the tasks are what get us what we want. They're not. Even though it would appear that they are. The tasks are the things that clear us out, literally. So whenever you have a focus on something, you are going to get tasks, things that you have to do. It doesn't happen by magic. But you can do the wrong thing for 50 years and not get anything. And you can do the right thing for 15 minutes and get everything. So it's doing the right tasks. And the right tasks come when you're in the right state of mind. You're literally shown what to do. I'm working on this EFT computer program, which I think is going to be a marvelous thing. It's going to help a lot of people make changes in beliefs that have hurt them all their lives. And it'll be something people can do themselves. They don't have to go to a practitioner. I've been looking for that all the time to find something. What can people use that they don't have to go to somebody else? Now, I'm all for practitioners and people doing that. I do that myself. I work with EFT, I work with Psyche, and I work with NLP, and I think it's great, and I see marvelous changes, and some of you in this room can even talk about those changes. We're here to do this ourselves, and my goal, my dream, is to get tools that will help people do it themselves. Because in the long run, you have to. Your psychology counselor cannot make your life better. They may give you some pointers, but you have to do something. You're the one that has to do it. So that's why I've developed these tools. And I learned some basic programming a long time ago when popular computers first came out in the 70s, the Tandy computers. They were 16K. Those of you who know the computers, that's almost no memory at all. In fact, you had to have a tape recorder to record a program on. But I never used it for any practical purposes, and about 10 years later, I learned something called Quick Basic, and I did make a program in Quick Basic that real estate people use, that they made 31 entries, and it figured out everything, the insurance, the taxes. It did something equivalent to a closing statement 30 days before the closing that was within $1 if they closed on the same day. It was that accurate. It used to be that you had to, if you wanted an insurance quote, you called up the insurance agent, and he spent 3 days looking at tables to give you a quote. Well, I just put them into a computer, let it do all the work. And there were no programs then for real estate people. There's tons of them now. But it was a different kind of program, and the most modern kind of program is called object-oriented program. And I took a class at St. Pete College for that about a year and a half ago. And it was like night and day. I mean, it's like I was going, what is this stuff? It was so different. But I stuck with it and learned enough. And I've been by trial, and I'd like not trial and error, but trial and success. Now, there's a lot of little things that happened that I thought it wasn't that interesting to. But it seemed that. Something I had never done before in programming. That I would just get these ideas. Why don't you try this? And I would try that and it wouldn't work, but then I'd see, oh, but this would, and that would work. And I had that guidance through this whole process. And even though I've come to some very strong glitches, when we come to a big glitch on the filming because of the editing, but we're going to go through that. That's just, isn't that interesting? And the program that I'm writing, I think, is going to be so simple for people to use because there's really so much programming that only looks at the user and not making it easy for the programmer, but making it easy for the person using it. And it has to do a lot of things behind the scene that the people never see. But it's been a fascinating experience for me because of the guidance I've had, because I was not upset when it wasn't working. And there was times I just said, okay, it's time to quit. 2 days ago, I said, I'm not playing with this thing for 3 days. And I didn't. And I'll go back to it when it's right. And then all of a sudden, it'll pop out what I need. And that's the way we were meant to live life. And that's the way you were meant to live life. And that's the way you can. Now, if you should accept this challenge of shifting your thought through pivoting and through gratitude and through the other tools, you're going to have changes that are made. And there's stuff in you that's been there since you were 4 or 5 or 6 years old and accumulated all your life that's going to have to get out. And it's okay. Can you imagine, do you know those big jars that the commercial restaurants use for mayonnaise, those huge gallon or 2-gallon jars? You've seen those? Imagine one of those full of mud. I mean, just right up to the top, full of mud. And you say, I got to clean this jar out. And so you go get a garden hose and you turn it on full blast and you jam that hose down the mud, clear water pouring into the jar. What comes out? Mud. Should you be surprised? Should you be shocked? If you start putting clear water, clear thoughts into your mind and there's mud down there, guess what? It's going to come up in our picture and you're going to say, isn't that interesting? Isn't it fun? Oh, goody, more mud. I'm getting rid of this stuff. And just allow it. And the more you allow it, and the less you're upset by the mud coming out, the quicker it cleans out. I actually did an experiment taking a glass of water and a quart, just a quart, or it was a gallon of water. The glass was full of mud, and I had it over a little bowl, and I poured the water in. And by the time I poured the water in this glass full of mud, the water was clean enough to drink because it was constantly going into just 1 gallon of water into a regular-sized glass full of mud. And that is the way it is with you. As you're focusing on what you want, and as you're pivoting, the mud will come up, the stuff. And so many people, when they start this process, they say, I tried that, but things got worse. They didn't get worse, they got better. You're just getting rid of some bad stuff. And yes, you're going to have challenges. You're always going to have challenges. There's always going to be stuff out there that's not what you want. Isn't that interesting? There's always going to be people who want to do it differently than you do. Isn't that interesting? There's always going to be times when you don't have the money right now to do what you want to do. Isn't that interesting? But there's nothing, if you seek, that you will not find. There's no door you can knock on that won't sooner or later be open to you. Jesus knew all this stuff, and he taught it. Unfortunately, it was fogged up by religion, but he understood the process and taught the process that we're teaching now, really making these kind of changes. There was a fellow by the name of Aesop. Anybody heard of him? He was a slave back in Greece 2,600 years ago or so. And he had lots of wonderful things, but one of the stories he told that I think is really neat was about a crow that was in a very arid area and there was no water around. He was very thirsty. And he saw a gallon jug with some water in the bottom of it. And he could get his head into the bottle, but he couldn't get in to where the water was. And so what the crow did was he went and picked up a pebble and threw it into the bottle. And another, and another, and another, and another. until a bottle filled up with pebbles and the water level came up to where he could get it. That is the kind of ingenuity and patience that we're going to have to use if you're going to be serious and really do this stuff and really change your life. Well, how long does it take? Stop asking the question, how long does it take? That slows you down. It takes until it's done. But the more you focus on it, the quicker and the easier it is. The more you resist it, the more you complain, the more you're upset, the harder and more strain that it is. Infinite patience brings immediate results. Do you have the patience to allow the world to be what it is, just exactly like it is, and accept it completely, and then focus on what you want? And not let any of that stuff out there affect your state of being. The doing is out there. It's in the time frame. We're in a state of being, and we want to keep our state of being up. That's your job. That's the work. See this guy right here? Nice guy. Anybody know who he is? Jack LaLanne. He was the godfather of fitness. Now there he is right there. That's a recent picture of him. He's 93 years old. Come on, folks. You could be, but what he did was practice his art, fitness. And that's his result. Now what we're talking about is mental fitness. Are you going to do the exercise of pivoting, the exercise of regularly using gratitude, the exercise of positive affirmations, and soon the exercise of EFT as soon as we get that program out? But all of those things together work your soil, put you in the state of mind that allows you to go where you want. And by the way, even when it isn't all turning out right yet, it's so much more fun to know for certain that it is, even if you don't have any proof whatsoever. Knowing that it's happening, knowing what our 12th affirmation is, tawofum, things always work out for me, changes your state of mind. You feel better. If nothing else, you feel better. And that, folks, is the process that you all have signed up for if you take this experience that you've had to heart. In the next and last lesson that I'm going to do, which will be the week after next, we're going to put all this together for you in a nice frame and show you the whole process integrated so you can see what we've talked about so far. But I kind of think that most of you are already beginning to get the picture of what we're talking about. And I have seen, just in those of you that I've been a little closer to and done some counseling with, I've seen magnificent changes. And I've had changes reported from people who just told me, since I've been doing some of this stuff in the class, my life is better. And we see that happening again and again. That's our objective. That's our aim. And I bless you all.